So there are 11 designated occupations that fall under that, and you can find the NOC codes on the immigration website, which goes through this. So oftentimes we get questions from individuals in different roles that work in the tech sector, maybe business function, marketing, sales. Unfortunately, those roles are not eligible. We specifically work with the roles that are eligible for the global talent stream. Now, why is it these specific roles? The reason is that Canada has determined that there is a shortage of talent in these areas. So they've made a priority on these. And this means that when we apply for a work permit on your behalf for these specific roles, we don't need to prove that there's no one else available to do this position in Canada like you would with other roles. These roles are designated that there is an identified shortage and that we can bring in talent to fill these roles quickly and easily if we can find the right person. So under the global talent stream, pre-COVID, we would apply for the employer authorization to hire you, and then we would do the work permit. And typically this process took about 2 weeks to 4 weeks. Now, given that we're in a time of a little bit of ambiguity, the processing times are taking a little bit longer. But that doesn't mean that work permits are not still being processed. So we are still working with employers. We're still doing the employer authorization. We're still doing the work permit authorization for candidates. However, the process is taking a little bit longer than normal. So another benefit of applying under the global talent stream is that besides the expedited processing time and the priority on these roles, your spouse or partner will also be able to get a work permit in that same expedited fashion. So unlike in the US, where H-4s are not readily available anymore, Canada gives an open work permit to your spouse. Your children who are accompanying will also be able to get study permits so they can study in our public education system for free when they come here. So these are all important considerations when you're applying for your work permit. So I'm just going to conclude it there for the overview of the global talent stream. If you have any questions specifically about that after, we can dig in deeper.
All right, thanks, Fiona. Can you still hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so first question, it's a two-parter. And again, remember my apologies in advance if I mispronounce the name. It's from Prithvi from India. And the first part of the question is, Prithvi is interested in applying for a job through our website, but is wondering, given the current COVID-19 situation, should they wait for a few months before applying, considering travel restrictions, or do you think the application should be done now?
Well, that really depends on yourself and your level of comfort with traveling and going through this process right now. So you can certainly apply for any of the jobs that are designated for international candidates. The employers here understand that there are delays in processing. So if they do decide to hire you, they are aware that the processing time might take a little bit longer than usual. The one consideration, though, is that if you do apply, you get a job, and you are selected for a position, when you do come to Canada, you will have to self-isolate for 14 days. So that is a consideration that you will need to take into account when you're making the decision. However, I always encourage candidates to apply as soon as possible. That way you're in our candidate database and we can start looking for roles that will match your profile.
Awesome. And the second part of the question is, if they clear the online coding challenges through the website and the application process, what is the next step? And what is the general timeline of those steps?
Okay, so once you clear the online coding test and interview, that is just a preliminary screen that we put all of our candidates through. When we put our candidates through that, we have a ranking system from 1 to 5. And typically, we will only present candidates who are 5 to employers for potential roles. So if you're a top-rated candidate for that role, we will present your profile to the employer. If the employer decides that they would like to proceed with your application, then we will reach out to you and we will schedule the first interview. Typically, you will have to go through 2 interviews with the employer. One is a culture fit interview. This is where they want to get to know you. It's more of a behavioral type interview, kind of a chance for them to get to see if you're going to fit with their organization. Some companies will do that as a first pass. Others will choose to do a technical interview as the first pass. And the technical interview is where they're going to dig in deep. They're going to talk about the technologies that they're using, the projects that they're working on. And one thing that we always advise candidates, you shouldn't just list every technology that you've ever come encounter with, because anything that's on your resume is fair game for the employer to ask. So anything that you list on your resume should be something that you can speak to and that you have tangible experience. So be careful not to exaggerate or inflate your resume, because if you do, when you get to that technical interview with the employer, you may be in trouble, and that might put you at risk of not getting the position. So in terms of how long this entire process takes, it really depends on the employer. Some employers will move really quickly. They'll go through the first interview, they'll schedule the second interview for later that week, and then we start working on the employment offer. Other times it can be a little bit of a longer process depending on the number of candidates they have and how senior the role is. I'm saying 2 as the average number of interviews, but we've seen candidates that have had to go through at least 3 rounds. So it really depends on the role and position. I often tell candidates to expect about 6 months for this process, from the time that you apply until the time that you would land in Canada.
Awesome. All right. Hope that answers your question, friend in India. We have another question. This is from Ramiz, and he is from Pakistan, but he is working in the United Arab Emirates. And he's wondering if looks like if someone has failed the online coding challenge, can they apply again?
Okay. Ramiz, I think I may have met you when I was in UAE earlier this year. But if not, it's great to meet you. Thank you for coming. So if you have not successfully completed the online coding challenge, you can certainly do it again. It depends on the role. Maybe the role that you applied for was not a right fit, so you might want to try a different coding challenge for a different role. And you can certainly do it again. I recommend that you take some time to brush up on your technical skills and find out what the feedback was from the team. So whether it was, if they gave you the feedback that it was on your communication skills, then maybe you need to focus on brushing up your English and your communication. If it was your technical skills, then you should do some practice on your coding so that you can clear that interview.
Excellent. And Rami says, yes, you did, in fact, meet. That's right. You did.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Okay, we're just waiting for the next question. So the floor is open. Okay, I've got a question from, it's all one. Okay, is it Kiranjit Saini? Kiranjit Saini? And where are you from, Kiranjit? I can see your question there. We just like to, from India. Thank you so much. What a world we live in. Look at that real-time response. And the question is, do we require a IELTS score? I never know how to say that, but I know
okay.
you know what I'm saying. Yes.
So for IELTS scores, typically when we ask candidates to apply, if they have IELTS scores, we would require a 6.5 overall band as sort of a benchmark. Now, it really depends on the country that you're coming from, whether IELTS scores is a requirement for a work permit. For example, in India, when you're applying for a work permit, one of the requirements that they ask for is IELTS scores. So I would always recommend having these if you are applying from India, because that is something that the embassy looks for in the application package for the work permit. It really depends on the country you're applying from. Some countries you don't have to present IELTS scores. Now, I want to give a little disclaimer, because right now I know that a lot of the IELTS testing centers are closed. So if you don't have IELTS and we get to the point where we're having to apply for your work permit, then we would have to look at other ways to overcome that, since the IELTS testing centers aren't open. So if you have IELTS right now, that's great. If not, it's really up to us and the employer to determine if you have the communication skills required to successfully do that position.
Awesome. And
Sorry, that was not a clear answer. That was a yes, maybe, no.
a follow-up, it looks like, from Ramiz, and this will mean something to you, Tiona, because you know all of these immigration acronyms, because we don't have enough acronyms in the world. But it just looks like, where's the follow-up from Ramiz? The FSW Express Entry draw didn't happen today. Is there any chance it is going to happen in the future?
Okay, so the Federal Skilled Workers Express Entry Draw is a permanent residency question. So, Ramiz, I'm going to park that question because today we're really going to focus on temporary work permits. So anything about permanent residency, please, I'm not trying to sideline these questions, but we'll work at those on another day. In terms of if there will be another Federal Skilled Workers Draw, as of 2 weeks ago, they did announce that they're going to start doing Federal Skilled Worker draws, and they did one 2 weeks ago. So I think it would be very likely that there will be more.
Okay. All right, moving on. This is from Anchor, also from India. And Anchor is saying they have 12 years of experience in quality assurance in IT, and just wanted to understand if GTA works with QA roles within IT, and typically what kind of role within QA do we work with?
Okay, that's a really great question. So we have had a couple of QA roles. For the most part, employers have not looked internationally for QAs. So they're typically looking for candidates that are local. In that sense, I wouldn't be able to really give you any feedback about the hiring of internationally for QAs. It seems to be a role that they're able to fill with local talent. You can keep looking on our website, and certainly we may have some come available, but it doesn't seem to be as high in demand as some of the other roles that we've had from employers.
So it's safe to say, it's just, sorry to say, but it's not a specialist enough role for what our current list of employees are looking for?
Typically for QA, they are looking for individuals who have experience in Canada, and usually really strong communication skills, really strong command of English language. So they're looking for someone who's a little bit more embedded in the industry here.
Okay. Okay, thank you for answering that, Tiana. We have another question from Junior, who is in Mexico, and he is asking, he's noticed that there are some positions on our websites that are available to start remotely. So being in Mexico, is it possible that he applies and starts remotely from Mexico?
Yes, certainly. For any of the roles that we have that say that they're available remotely, yeah, you would start as soon as you're available, and as soon as the employer gives you the offer, you can start remotely, and we can start working on your work permit. Being from Mexico, a benefit is that we have two different options for getting you to Canada. We have the global talent stream, but we also have what was formerly the NAFTA agreement, which allows for free mobility from individuals from Mexico and the US to Canada.
Perfect. Hope that helps, Junior. Okay, got another question from, and when I said it was going to be hard to pronounce names, it makes it especially challenging when Zoom is putting what I guess is your first name and last name sort of packaged into one little username. So this is from Shumograj. I probably butchered that, a combination of both your names together, but that's the Zoom chat feature for you. And the question is, Jun Mugraj is from India, is a mobile developer with 11 years of experience working in Bahrain. Are there companies willing to hire employees with visa sponsorship?
Yes, so that's exactly what we do at Global Talent Accelerator. So we work on behalf of companies in Canada to help them find talent that is and for hard to fill roles where the talent doesn't exist within the labor market here. So we have a number of employers all throughout Canada that have very specific roles to fill. What happens is you apply to the role on our website, you do our coding test and our online interview. From there, we rank you based on your communication skills, your technical skills, your fit with the company. We typically present 4 and 5 rated candidates. So it's a 5-point scale, 1 to 5. And so those candidates that are top rated will present to the employer, at which point you will go through the employer's interview process. Once they select you for the role, we'll start on the immigration process with you. So we'll work with the employer to get the authorization they require to hire a foreign worker. And then we will give you that employment offer that you require, and we'll help you complete the work permit application package so that you, and if you wish, your family can come to Canada on a work permit.
Awesome. Thank you. And it looks like a quick follow-up question. Which skill sets are in high demand, iOS or React Native or Android developers?
We actually are getting a lot of requests for iOS developers. So that one I would definitely say is in high demand. We Android as well, but definitely iOS is probably where we're finding the biggest demand.
Okay, and it's a similar question, I think, really similar. I'm going to read it out anyway, and it's from Kiranjit. Kiranjit, where are you from? Let's see, India. Okay, Kiranjit. So what are the technologies more focused on? Another mobile developer for Android, or does Kiranjit need knowledge of hybrid apps and their development like Flutter or React Native?
Yeah, so it really depends on the company and what they're using. So, like we say, it's always good to just keep, continuously learning, updating your skills, being on top of the latest trends. And we really encourage that for candidates.
Okay. Hope that helped. Kiranjit, again, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. And we've got a question again from Ramiz here. It's a very similar question, though. Yeah, I can probably answer this. What are the skills that are in demand? Which skills are more in demand? Do you want? I think you've answered that, but maybe you could sort of summate it again.
Okay, so just to clarify, can I ask the question, is this specifically for the employers that we work with, or are you looking specifically in Canada in terms of the occupations that are eligible for work permits? What?
For both. Yeah.
Okay. So what we typically find is, so if you go onto the Canadian immigration website and you go under Global Talent Stream, you'll find a list of occupations that are in demand. So there's about 11 NOC codes. NOC codes are national occupation codes that classify different roles. So these include data scientists, software developers, software engineers, web designers, and consultants. So there's a number of different roles that fall under these categories. Now, when you're looking at the roles that we work with companies, they tend to typically align with this. Typically, employers are looking for senior developers. And when they talk about senior here in Canada, they mean 7+ years experience. So in some countries, I know that someone is considered senior with maybe 3 or 5 years experience. Here in Canada, they're looking for minimum 7 years experience if they're hiring at the senior level. And it also depends on the types of companies that you've worked in, because sometimes if you've been in a large enterprise organization, the scope might be a little bit smaller than if you're working in a smaller company where you have a lot of responsibility. So things like the size of organization that you've worked with will impact those years of experience. So senior full stack developer is always in demand. iOS developer, we're getting a lot of requests for. Data science, always in demand. And then sometimes more of these team lead positions. So someone who is able to come in, be that senior person to lead a team, and the company will be able to build a team around you. So they're really looking for leadership skills, mentorship skills, experience running teams. Maybe you've got your Scrum Master certification. That's also an added bonus. So they're looking for someone who can not only code and do development work, but also understand the architecture and are able to build a team.
Perfect. Okay, hope that answered your question. So next question is from Prithvi, also from India. And Prithvi would like to know what kind of companies does GTA work with? Are they mostly startups, mid-range, or are they long-running big organizations?
Okay, that's a great question. So typically we work with mid-range companies. So they're growing mid-sized companies. They're probably at about 20 to 100 employees, and they're at the process of scaling up. So they've usually received their Series B funding, and they're looking to add, maybe 10 developers to their team within the next couple of months, next 6 months to a year. We work with companies in all sorts of different sectors. So fintech, health tech, ag tech. It really depends on the part of the country and the types of industries that are specific to that region. We typically don't work with a lot of larger organizations. And same thing with startups. When they're early stage, they're typically hiring locally and hiring from their own network. So it's when companies are getting to this scaling stage and they need specialized skills that they're not able to find, that they're really looking to look internationally and around the world for that top talent to come and join their team.
Awesome. Thank you, Tiona. This looks like a very important question from Junior. So based from his readings on our website, he sees that GTA offers support when candidates first arrive in Canada with a place to stay for the first while. And he's wondering if that's possible for a family of 4.
Okay. Yes. So first of all, one thing that we do is we're very supportive for candidates when they're coming here. Everyone on our team either has come to Canada from another country or they've lived in other countries throughout their life. So we understand from a personal perspective what it's like to pack up, move somewhere new, and for some of us, move somewhere new with your family in tow. So it can be quite a challenge. So we really take it as something personal to us in helping you adjust and settle in. So what we will do is along with the immigration support, we will send you the documentation and pre-arrival package, which kind of gives you an outline of what to expect when you come here. We can arrange for temporary accommodations for you and your family. We have a partnership with a residence here in the city that has beautiful furnished apartments. So you will be responsible for the cost of it, but we will ensure that you have the reservation. We typically pick our candidates up from the airport. We'll drop them off. We make sure that you have some basic necessities in your fridge so you can get started. Then the next day, we take you out to get your social insurance number, to do your banking, get you set up on our phone, and then a number of the other simple settlement things that you need. We really do recommend that you get temporary housing here for at least a month because you want to see what the city's like and decide, which part of the city that you want to live in. If you have kids, you're also going to want to take into consideration what type of school you want to send them to. So that's really going to impact where you live. And you're from Mexico, so you might find it interesting that I send my son to a Spanish immersion school. So one good thing that we have here is we have a lot of different types of school options for your children. So, and it's all public education. So if you're coming, that's something that you're going to want to take into consideration, what type of school you want to send your kids to. And that's really dependent. That's going to impact where you live.
Awesome. Okay, immigration question from Ramiz. If anyone has a profile in Express Entry, does it make any difference when applying for a temporary worker position?
Okay. So if you have an Express Entry profile, you will have a CRS score. And the temporary work permit is separate from the PR application. So the PR application is your Express Entry profile. With your profile, that's valid for 12 months. And every month they have at least 2 draws that are points-based. Now, what happens is if you get an employment offer, that's going to give you additional points for your Express Entry profile. So what you do is you have both applications going in tandem. So with your employment offer, we submit your work permit application. You also update your Express Entry profile. And in some instances, with that employment offer, you can also apply for a specific PNP program, a provincial nomination program, depending on where the employer is located. So you can get at least 50 points for the employment offer, and then you might get an additional 600 points if you get a provincial nomination. So the Express Entry profile will stay active, and oftentimes the employment offer will support it and help you get your ITA. So for example, we've had a couple of candidates from around the world who, as soon as they got their employment offer in the next Express Entry draw, they were given an ITA to apply for PR. So they're processing both applications at the same time.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. Hope that helped Ramiz. Next question is again from Kiranjeet, and Kiranjeet's wondering, what are the locations in Canada that the companies or organizations, where are they located, that are most likely to provide a work permit?
So Kiranjeet, the companies that we work with are all throughout Canada. We're based in Calgary, as that's where our company originated. So we have a lot of connections here and a lot of employers here. We also have a distributed team. So we have people based in Vancouver. We have a number of employers that we're working with in Vancouver and throughout British Columbia. As well, we work in Eastern Canada, so in Montreal and Toronto. We do have some connections and some other employers throughout the country, but those are probably the key locations where we would be placing you. So Calgary, Vancouver, Montreal, and Toronto.
Awesome. And it's all Canadian, so it's all great. And I think, is anyone else? I'm just waiting for another question here. I feel Tiona's covered a whole lot of information here, and hopefully, even if it wasn't a question you asked, hopefully everyone that's taking part right now has gotten some extra helpful information from the questions asked by others in the chat group. Is there anything you want to say, Tiona?
Yeah. So I just wanted to cover one thing, because this question came up. This came up from a candidate the other day. They were wondering if the work permit that they get when they're hired, if it's an open work permit or a closed work permit. So when you go through this process with us and we match you with an employer, it is a closed work permit, which means that you are tied to that employer. Now, typically the work permit is issued for 2 years. So that means that you would be working with that employer for 2 years. We hope that it's a good fit for you and the employer. But you are not required to stay with the employer if there are issues. Likewise, the employer is not required to keep you for 2 years if there are issues. We work very closely with you and the employer so that nothing comes up that can't be resolved. So this should be a process where you feel safe and secure and confident that the relationship between you and the employer is going to be positive. If you apply for permanent residency within that 2-year period, then you're open and eligible to work with any employer that you choose. If, for example, you decide that you don't want to apply for permanent residency, then after those 2 years, you can also reapply to extend your temporary work permit. So you can decide whether you want to keep your status in Canada temporary or if you want to proceed to get that permanent residency. So you will be on a closed work permit. It is employer specific. If, for example, the employer does terminate your contract, then we would work with you to hopefully help find you another employer. In the event that that doesn't happen, you are eligible to stay in Canada for the duration of your work permit. However, you cannot work with another employer. So that if you do find another employer, you would have to get them to then sponsor your work permit. So I want to make this very clear. If, for example, your employment is terminated with an employer, you do not have to depart the country in 30 days. You have until the work permit expires. However, you cannot work with another employer during that time. So that's what a closed work permit means. Now, for example, if you have a spouse or partner that is accompanying you, they would get an open work permit. An open work permit means that you can work with any employer. So, for example, if your husband or wife is coming with you, they will get an open work permit and they can work with any company. So they can go out, look for their job, and if their contract is terminated or if they're not happy there, they can leave at any time. So their work permit is not tied to an employer, it's tied to them being here in the country with you. So that's the difference between open and closed.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So pretty much last call for questions, guys. We were hoping to get this. We'll be doing these again. Okay, so no panic. If something wasn't covered today and you have something that pops into your head or a situation during your process that's in your near future with all these applications, if something comes up, we'll be doing these again. And you can also always reach out to us or Tiona on LinkedIn. I believe most of you follow us there because that's how you found this event. Looks Kiran Jeet might have a question here. Then how can we change our job in a closed permit? I think I know the answer, but go ahead, Tiona.
So you can't, really. The hope is that if you're coming and you're working with this employer, that you are going to stay long-term with them. That's something that they'd be looking for. That's something that we would hope that you would also be looking for. If for some extenuating circumstances that the position's terminated or it's not a good fit for you, the first step would be we would try to see if there's another employer that's interested in hiring you on. If not, you would have to convince an employer to sponsor you and do the whole application for a work permit for you. So they would then need to apply for the authorization to hire a foreign worker, the LMIA, and then you would need to do a new work permit application.
Excellent. And I do encourage you, I mean, Global Talent Accelerator is very selective in the companies we work with. We don't just work with anybody. It's a very, very it's a great list of companies. And if you get a chance, I can send out an email, a link to our YouTube channel. We have a lot of success stories there that showcase people from India, people coming from China through the US. Just, take a few minutes to watch some of those stories, which will hopefully be one of your stories in the near future. Oh, we got another question here. It's from, this my most challenging name again, Shun Mugaraj. How long does the interview and work permit process take? Do employers wait 2 to 3 months on this hiring process?
Okay, so in terms of the interview process, once the employer decides that they want to proceed with you, they will take you through their internal hiring process, their interview process. When we decide that they're going to make you the offer, then I will work with them to get them the authorization they need to hire the foreign worker. And then we'll work with you to do your work permit application and the accompanying applications for you and your family. Now, the assumption is that once you receive your work permit, you will be coming to Canada. Employers understand that right now there are some delays and they have been open to working within that. If you get your work permit and you decide that, oh no, I'm going to wait 2 or 3 months, then that's that would not be acceptable. So I know that in India, you often have to give a 2 or 3 month notice. So it would be advisable to give that notice when you're applying for your work permit, or let the employer know at least that let your employer know at least that you're going through this process, because I don't see an employer waiting 2 or 3 months once you receive your work permit for you to come to Canada, because they've already waited for that time for the whole processing.
Excellent. Okay, from Kiranjeet. I'm not even sure what this question means, but you have the big immigration brain, Tiona. Can we apply for PR in between then TR?
Okay, so permanent residency and temporary work permits are two separate processes. Anyone can create an express entry profile at any time. So, and it's point-based. So if you have 450 points and you have an express entry profile, then you will likely get an invitation to apply and be required to submit your documentation. So there's no restriction on creating an express entry profile or doing your PR application. If that's in process, there is also no restriction on applying for a temporary work permit. So both of them can be done at the same time. Or if one is in process, it won't impact the other.
Awesome. Excellent. And a very a great question from Junior. If he is to start working remote from Mexico, he's worried about the payment method. Is it easy to be paid into his account in Mexico? Or alternatively, can he open a bank account in Canada to receive payment?
Okay, so Junior, what some individuals that we've worked with that are working remotely do is they'll use services such as TransferWise or PayPal to transfer the money. It depends on what the employer chooses, and that can go directly into your account. And typically, they'll pay either biweekly or monthly. Alternatively, Junior, I know that Scotiabank, Canadian bank, has branches in Mexico. They have a very strong presence in Mexico. So certainly you could go there and open up an account. And that way you would also be able to then create a Canadian account when you land in Canada. And they may even be able to allow you to open a Canadian account while you're there.
Awesome. But you know, Junior, to be very clear, if you're hired and you're working remotely for any company that GTA works with, you will get paid. Okay, 100% you're getting paid. Okay, so put that out of your head. That would be figured out. Okay, we're caught up on all the questions, so we'll do a last call here. Last call for questions for the big, amazing, powerful immigration brain of Tiona.
I'm going to give my obligatory disclaimer and caution to everyone while we're here, especially since I've seen that we have a lot of individuals from India here. I really want to advise and caution everyone that you should never pay for an employment offer in Canada. This practice happens a lot, especially in India, where someone will say, if you pay X amount of money, I can get you an employment offer and an LMIA for a work permit in Canada. This practice is completely illegal. So please be wary of that if anyone says that they can easily get you a work permit in Canada. Also, in Canada, it's illegal to pay for a job or pay for a service to get you a job. So at no point will we ask you for money for any type of consulting service. So the employer is the one responsible for paying for the immigration piece. You will have to pay the hard fees, which is your government fees. You'll have to pay for your biometrics. You will possibly have to pay for your flights and relocation here, but in no way will you ever have to pay for your employment offer. So it's very important that if you do meet consultants, advisors, agents around the world that say, oh yeah, I'll pay $20,000 and I'll get you a job in Canada, that you don't just walk, but you run away from that.
Very important advice. Very, very important.
And I keep mentioning this because I've heard, and I continue to hear every week, stories of people who have fallen victim to this. And it's fraud, and you will typically just end up being out money. And if you go through this process, not only will you lose money, but also you may possibly be banned from coming into Canada under other immigration streams because it is considered immigration fraud.